Thanks, everyone. Shh. Please find a seat. Now, due to COVID, you can probably notice that there are labels on the seats, and the seats are going to say, sit, and then there's no. So do not sit where it says no, but sit where it says sit. Very easy. So space yourselves out a bit. Thank you. Next thing I want you to do is take out your smartphones. Please take out your smartphones and Google St. Nicholas Marrickville YouTube. That will lead you to tonight's video, but in the comments section there's a link to my slideshow. I prepared a slideshow for this talk, but because we were shifted into the church, we couldn't have a projector or a screen. So in place of that, I ask that you have your smartphones in front of you, and I will be referring to slides in their number so that you can look at the pictures. It's very important. So I'll be referring to some aspects of the churches that we'll be talking about this evening, and it would be very, very good to see on your smartphones exactly what I'm talking about. Who hasn't got a smartphone tonight? Okay, so only one person will be imagining. Are we filming now, George? We're good? Good to go? All right. Probably the first thing that we need to do, considering that this talk will end up on the internet, and that's obviously a danger, because, you know, both friend and foe will be watching the video. And with anything you say these days, people will disagree, that's fine. They will question the accuracy of what you're saying, that's fine, that's important. But for the sake of just sort of covering our bases, I should start with a couple of disclaimers so that we don't have too much drama. The first disclaimer is this. Anything I say tonight is not against a culture or a nation necessarily. That would be generalizing. So I'll be specifically referring to individuals and representatives of governments and what they have said and done, and that by no means suggests that everyone they represent holds the same view. But there will be a slide further down the track which will show you that perhaps a great majority might share the view of their leaders, and that leaders don't say things in a vacuum, out of nowhere. They know what their constituents like, they know what their constituents would like to see, and that explains some decisions in some democracies, most democracies. The second disclaimer is that although the topic is one-way street, turning churches into mosques, there's probably some mosque out there or two that has been turned into a church. Okay? 1, 2. If someone knows of more, please put it in the comments section. And I say, in the whole world. Now, why do I say this? Because people who are not friendly to the Christian point of view and actual history, which I would say that history is an objective thing, and you can weigh up different points of view, say the following. Muslims have turned churches into mosques. Yes, they have. But so have Christians turned mosques into churches. And that somehow equalizes things. See what I mean? Christians may have turned one or two mosques into churches, but Muslims have turned hundreds of churches into mosques, but somehow that's the same thing. And we're equal. And it's, cancels each other out. So don't complain, dear Christians. And, there is this idea that if you can find one example of the more peaceful culture doing the same thing, well, we're all the same. We're all equally fanatic. There's this broad brush of the stroke of the brush, where somehow we're all the same. And there has not been a worse or a better. We're all the same. Now, this is historically a falsehood. Okay, they're the two disclaimers. The next thing I should say before I continue is, how do we make this talk tonight one that won't make you upset? Because really, if as Christians our ultimate aim is to love and respect and to find our peace, then we shouldn't read any history. Honestly, I'm a historian and I'm saying that. If you want to not get upset, don't read history, because history is full of upsetting things. And just keep looking forward. You can do that. That's an option. The second option can be, and that's something I have come to, being a historian and gone through a lot of heartache and dealing in my early years as a student with the reality of the past. And, well, how do I maintain my Christianity? How do I maintain my peace if I keep going through the wounds of the past? And this is your second option. Your second option is, can you not desensitize yourself to history, but can you remove yourself from the emotion of history, from the investment of your personal self to the past, to the plight of your ancestors, to seriously bad things that have occurred in the past, and you know that your ancestors received such oppression, cruelty, and murder and mayhem. Can you disconnect yourself from this? Yes, you can. Now, I'm not saying be desensitized to it. It still allows you to identify the wrong as wrong and murder as murder and massacre as a massacre. You're not going to erase that. But as a Christian, you've got to somehow not allow yourself to be placed in that. Why? Because if you allow what the natural emotion is from reading such history and stories of the past, your natural reaction, your natural human reaction, are we under a flight path in Marrickville? Oh, you guys need some acoustic insulation. Bring that up with your comedian local priest. The plane's over now. That's better. Good. If you allow yourself to enter the fray of history, same can be said with politics, you will feel upset. You will feel anger. You will feel a sense of justice that needs to be served. You will feel hate, perhaps. Well, I don't want that to be the case. I don't want that to be what you're going to feel walking out of this talk this evening. So what am I asking you to be? There's a nice Greek theological term for this, dispassionate. Dispassionate. Do you understand that word? Apathis. Passionate means you're passionate about it, you're allowing the emotion to express itself normally. Dispassion means you don't allow yourself to feel those normal emotions. It's very important. Otherwise, you know what? We're engaging in the same thought process that you're about to be exposed to with our Muslim friends. I suppose that has now called for a further disclaimer that our Muslim friends are indeed our friends. I have neighbours on both sides who are Muslim, perfectly fine living next to each other. And I think there has to be, can we all agree there are moderate Muslims and fanatic Muslims, as there are moderate Christians and fanatic Christians, as there are moderate anything and fanatic anything, including non-religious people. In politics, same story. There are fanatics, i.e. activists, burning things down. Hasn't stopped for 3 months. And then you've got your moderates, people just turn up to vote. Okay, are we in agreement that not everyone can be boxed in categories? Okay, so same with the Muslims. The majority are moderates, and there is a small minority who, become fanatic. Now, they don't become fanatic out of nowhere. To be a moderate Muslim, you need to ignore some things. You need to ignore some parts of the Quran. You need to ignore some parts of the biography of Muhammad. So for you to be a moderate Muslim, there's some ignoring that you have to do. So not all Muslims are fanatic, but all fanatic Muslims used to be moderate. Did I make myself clear? They didn't all start fanatic. They all started moderate. But somewhere along the line, they become radicalized. Somewhere along the line, they become fanatic. Somewhere along the line, there is a shift. Somewhere along the line, they actually read what either the Quran or other further Muslim literature in subsequent centuries records, which is an incitement to violence, which can be an incitement to murder and mayhem, which perfectly excuses conquest as a legitimate thing to do and to wage war for conquest. That's perfectly okay. That Islam is not just a religion of spirituality. There's certainly an element of spirituality in Islam, but Islam has its very strong political ideology, and that's always been the case. Muhammad didn't just preach a spiritual religion, he also waged war against neighbouring Arab entities. He conquered them, forced them to accept Islam, this is fellow Arabs, and established a government. So from day one, Islam goes together with politics. It covers every aspect of life. And if we deny this historical fact, we are indeed denying history. And you know what? We're not paying attention to the very Muslims of generation after generation who have espoused such principle. Even the modern day ones who are turning churches into mosques in 2020. They're not hiding the political side. Why are we hiding it? Because are we more politically correct? Are we nicer? And we deny the reality. They believe in an Islamic state. May not be the one established in Syria, but they believe in establishing and keeping an Islamic state. Or if their country is already an Islamic state, maintaining it as such. And every last little detail that might be remaining needs to fall into line. as we will see. Okay. Mind you, the fanatic Muslims don't consider themselves to be fanatic. They consider themselves to be true Muslims, and that the moderate Muslims are traitors to the faith, that they're not good enough Muslims because they don't want to fight a war of jihad. Devices. Slide number 2. So you should have received that link for the benefit of the people on live stream in the comments section of this YouTube video, St. Nicholas Marrickville. And I'm directing you to slide 2, where you will see a picture of the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, in Constantinople. The Turks call Constantinople Istanbul, which is an abbreviation of or rendition of Istinpolin or Constantinoupoli. And the carpets laid out, the great marble floors from 1,500 years ago, when this church was built as a church, have been covered. Big Arabic Quranic scripture is sprawled over the scaffolding in that purple thing on the left. There's actual scaffolding there that the archaeologists are working on Hagia Sophia to this day, and that's been draped over with Quranic scripture. And there are Muslim worshippers on the carpet worshipping. This was July the 24th this year. Slide 3. What we see in slide 3 is outside Hagia Sophia, worshippers in the parklands in front of Hagia Sophia, also joining in on those Friday prayers. And most of them are wearing masks because it was during COVID. We know for a fact that about 3,000 people contracted coronavirus that day. And there were people screaming out Allahu Akbar in celebration of the reconversion of Hagia Sophia back into a mosque. As you can see from that picture, Hagia Sophia, which is a domed church, is flanked by 4 minarets. So Hagia Sophia managed to be a church for 1,000 years approximately before the Muslims took over Constantinople. And it is normal Muslim practice that mosques only have, it is original and ancient Muslim practice that mosques have 1 minaret. 1 minaret. And I am drawing a line of difference between Arab Islam and Turkish Islam now. And the Arabs fought their jihads as well, no doubt about it, and we spent many, many centuries fighting the Arabs before we had to fight the Turks, fend them off from attacking our land. And the thing with the Turks is that, first of all, they're not Arabs. But it is proper practice in normal Islam that prayers in a mosque are held in Arabic, regardless of what nation you are. It is not normal that the prayers are done in any language other than Arabic. That possibly explains why the Turks don't get some of the message of Islam. And I will bring to your attention one video you might want to Google where an Arabic Muslim scholar is calling out the Turks and saying, you can't convert churches into mosques. You shouldn't be doing that. That Muhammad taught us to respect the places of worship of the people of the book, and that we can conquer them, but we can't turn their places of worship into mosques. We should build our own mosques. And he denounces the Turks for constantly turning churches into mosques. So you will find that the Turks have converted more churches into mosques than the Arabs have ever done so. Okay? Now, there are notable and famous examples of exception. The great church of St. John the Baptist in Damascus was established as an Orthodox Christian church. When that was taken over by the first wave of Arabic Muslim invaders, that was turned into a mosque and has been a mosque the whole time since the invasion. But the church itself is a Christian edifice. Christians built it. And in fact, some of the mosaics that you can find at that, it's the Grand Mosque of Damascus these days, that you can find at the Grand Mosque of Damascus, was the Muslim conquerors employing Christian artisans to decorate the newly changed church into a mosque. Did you get that? So we've taken over the mosque, but we need to decorate it with Muslim things. We don't like icons and pictures of humans and the human form. That's a no-no in Islam. Let's get some trees and natural motifs on the walls of the mosque. Well, who can do mosaics? No Muslims. Okay. The Christians. Okay, here, we'll pay you to do that. And so those mosaics that you will find at the Grand Mosque were decorated by Christians in the employ of the Muslim conquerors. This can happen in the future as well, has happened in the future of Muslim history as well. Going back to slide 3, why are there 4 minarets around Hagia Sophia? And the answer is because the Turks felt like doing that. Because we're the boss. We're the conquerors. So we want to build 4 minarets. That's how it works. What rules? We want to build 4 minarets. We have taken over the caliphate. This is the Ottomans now, 1500s, 14 and 1500s onwards. From the 1500s, they took over the caliphates of the Middle East, and by the 1700s, they've got the entire Muslim Mediterranean as well. And they've taken over the caliphate from all the other contenders for being the caliphates. Damascus, Mecca. No, Istanbul is now the seat of the caliph. And the Ottoman Sultan was both the religious leader and the supreme political leader of Islam in their ideology. There was no separation like we have in the Christian world and had in the Christian world, and more so in the East, where there was a clear separation. Emperor, patriarch, imperial authority, church had their space, they worked together, they knew what lines not to cross. Disclaimer, those lines were crossed many, many times, but in 1,000 years we can probably point to a couple of dozen instances in 1,000 years, which is a pretty good record in the East. In the West, there was a fusion of religion and state, church and state. The Pope is a great example. He is both a religious leader and a political leader. He has a government, he has a country, he taxes, he used to tax. He used to lead armies. He would take land off other kings and other leaders of Italy. He would compete with others. He was just like any other king. In fact, in their political ideology, it's very similar to Islam. This whole thing of fighting wars and them being blessed somehow, and that, I'm talking about crusades now, you can draw parallels between the crusades and jihad. Now, can the same not be said about Eastern Christianity? You can probably find some examples in 2,000 years and count on them on two hands. But there was a clear delineation between waging war for the state and that the church be pacifist and not be engaging in war. I'll give you a couple of examples to illustrate the point. Priests could not bear arms in Eastern Christianity. It is unacceptable that priests pick up a sword, pick up a gun. Just not on. And so in Byzantine legislation, it was forbidden. This was reflected in law, that priests not only should not take up arms, but if they were to take up arms, there would be punishment for that. Another example is that when the Byzantine resurgence occurred in the 800s and 900s, and Byzantine Christian Roman, Eastern Roman armies took back Crete from the Arab Muslims who had it for 300 years, Crete, the island of Crete. The Byzantine emperor noticed that the Arab Muslims would declare holy war and jihad, and the deal was, you fought in this jihad and you died in this jihad, in this holy war, that's your automatic passport to heaven. And that seemed to work for the Muslims. They would jump into war and they would win more often, and this was good for their military prowess and military success. So the Byzantine emperor, Nikephoros Phokas, comes back from Crete and says to the church, the patriarch and the synod around him, says, look, the Muslims do this, it really works for them. Can we do the same? Can we please declare the soldiers who died in war against the Muslims in Crete in the same way the Muslims do? Can we declare them martyrs? Which is definitely a tick in Islam and definitely a tick in Roman Catholic crusade. Do you know what the response was from the patriarch and the synod, the church? No, absolutely not. This was an emperor. This was an autocrat. This was someone who had full power within his government, asking. See, it's not an imposition. He respects the church, you see. The church then responds politely and says, look, no, this is not acceptable, it's not consistent, it's not in accordance with our beliefs, not in accordance with our canons, not in accordance with our legislation, and we say you should not do this. And here we have an emperor, despite his wish, acceding to the advice of the church. Now, this is not some fusion. This is a clear separation. And we're so happy that this example survived in history for us to be able to show up as, well, we can't be classed in the same category as crusade and jihad, i.e. the Christian East cannot be classed in the same category. The one area of criticism is possibly the nationalist revolutions of the 18 and 1900s, where we know priests and patriarchs and clerics joined in, not all, many joined in the rebellion against the Turks after 600 years of oppression. Athanasios Diakos, Papa Flesas, Bishop Germanos of Patra. There's a whole number of priests who were involved in the rebellion. Some of them led little groups of soldiers. Others fought guerrilla warfare and others were involved in the organising side of the rebellion. The blessing of arms, if that has happened in the last couple of centuries, it is because we have nationalism is a stronger ideology than Orthodox Christianity is as a religion. Nationalism, i.e. die for your country, is a stronger force than don't fight, be peaceful, be a good Christian, have peace. Most people wanted peace and said, look, if we fight and kill 2 Turks, they're going to come and kill the whole village. I don't think we should fight the Turks. And I'm not saying it was just priests, the populace. Now, people in the nationalist frame of mind would call these people who want peace traitors. And I'm saying this because we can easily be accused of some of the things I'm going to mention tonight. Thank you for your patience. But not to the degree and quantity of what the Turks especially have managed to do. Slide 4. Slide 4 shows the Imam on that first day of prayer, July the 24th, 2020, climbing up I think it's called the Kitab, which is the pulpit, the equivalent of our pulpit, to give his sermon. Now, can you see what he's holding in his hand? Can you see what he's holding in his hand? A sword. Okay. This is normal, okay, for especially the Turkish imams. The Turks are a bit more belligerent, warlike. If you thought the Arabs were warlike in their earlier centuries, the Turks to a greater degree. So this is unthinkable that a Christian priest be holding a sword in a sermon. Unthinkable. He's holding a sword. And he was criticised by elements of worldwide commentary and media. Can someone help the young lady? She wants to exit the church. Just open the door for her. That's it. And he actually responded to tell us why this is normal and why this is okay. And I will actually read out to you I'm going to paraphrase, his reasoning. And his reasoning is this: we conquered this place, and it is our God-given right to celebrate our conquest. If we are holding the sword in our left hand, this represents peace. And if we are holding the sword in our right hand, this represents conquest. Did you get that? Are you with me? What's the difference? You're holding a sword either way because you've used your right hand to conquer, and by conquering you have created a subjection of peoples, and by extension you have peace. You have peace because they're not fighting back. Oh, and then that means you can put it in your left hand because you've subjected them, you've oppressed them, you've subjugated them. Either way, it is domination. Either way, a sword in the right or the left, same thing, it's domination. And it also tells you that you're allowed to do it. It also tells you that you can keep doing it. You can keep conquering. You can keep fighting wars. That people fighting wars gives you righteousness. That if you win this by war, you've won it, you deserve it. slide number 5. It's a zoom in on the apse of the Church of Hagia Sophia. What do you see? Curtains? Okay. That place of positioning of Hagia Sophia that has Panagia, a mosaic of Panagia, the mother of Jesus, in that position up there. And for 500 years, the Muslims had plastered over this. So long from 1453, when it was converted originally as a mosque, all the way to 1920-something, they had plastered the mosaics because that offends them. Iconography and the human form offends them. And so they will either destroy or erase. Now what they've done is put curtains, white sheets over the iconography. One of the Virgin Mary, and the one on the right is an angel. Angels offend us. You see what's going on here? Even though angels are part of Muslim belief, the depiction of an angel in the human form is offensive to Muslims. And so, even though that was created 1,000 years before they stole it, it's offensive to them. Slide 6. Hagia Sophia is not the only church that has been converted into a mosque. So it's plural. We have in slide 6 the Church of Holy Wisdom, i.e. Hagia Sophia, of the town of Trebizond, which is to the extreme east of Turkey, Asia Minor, close to Georgia. And what I'd like you to notice is the facade of the church. The facade of the church is the model for the facade of this church here in Sydney. St. Nicholas Marrickville has followed the design of Hagia Sophia of Trebizond in the front facade. So when you exit this church, you will see that that's the design they've followed to design this church. So you can understand why for us Orthodox Christians, these churches, which are thousands and thousands of years old, are part of our heritage, and that we feel for them, and that it hurts us when we see this constant abuse of these places of worship. Couldn't they build their own mosque? Yeah, they did. Constantinople or Istanbul has 3,500 churches at last count. That's not enough. They have to convert whatever church is remaining. They will say, that's not quite accurate. We will convert the churches which were once converted by the conquerors, Mehmet, and subsequent sultans. We won't convert any of your churches that you built recently. We're very nice. We'll just convert the ones that are 2,000 years old or 1,500 years old, because they're being nice. So they'll plonk on a minaret or 2 or 3 or 4, as the case may be. They will cover or efface or erase the iconography in those churches. And the 3,500 mosques of Constantinople are not enough. Now, how many Byzantine churches are in Istanbul today? A couple of dozen. 20, 30. Okay? About 300 churches altogether, but that includes the modern buildings. Churches that were built 100 years ago or 150 years ago. Greek Orthodox churches, but that count also includes Armenian and other denominations as well. So in terms of the Byzantine monuments, most of which are UNESCO listed as not Turkish heritage, not Greek heritage, but world heritage, are still being turned into mosques. Why? Because they're ours. That doesn't tell me that you care about world heritage. That doesn't tell me that you care about universal values. Like I will quote from the same imam that's holding the sword. He talks about universal values. I don't know which universal values he's talking about. And all of the Byzantine churches in Constantinople have been converted into mosques. A couple of dozen, all of them with the exception of Hagia Irini, which is next to Hagia Sophia, and that was never turned into a mosque because it was used as a storehouse for the Sultan's regiment. And that explains why they probably won't ever turn it into a mosque, because it never was turned into a mosque. And there is one Byzantine church that the Greek Orthodox Church still has, just one, Panagia Mouchliotissa. Every other Orthodox church, Greek Orthodox Church, has been converted, including in the last week, when I was told to do this talk a month ago. Little would I have known that another one would be turned into a mosque subsequent to that, and that is the Church of Chora. And the Church of Chora is one of the most spectacular masterpieces of Greek Orthodox / Byzantine / Eastern Roman Christian culture. Slide 7. Now, this is not something new. This is not something from the 2020s. This has been going on for a long, long time. And for the Turks in question, this is normal. This is a no-brainer. Of course we were going to turn Hagia Sophia into a mosque. There was no question about it. It was a matter of time. The very fact that it was converted from a mosque into a museum was wrong, say the Muslims. Kemal Atatürk, who ushered in secularism into Turkey, democracy and a republic into Turkey, and abolished the head coverings, and abolished and separated religion from state, and abolished the Arabic script and brought in the Latin script, and all these things that he did was a sad turn of events, according to the normal Muslims. To the moderate Muslims, he's a hero. To the moderate Muslims, that's what Turkey should be. Turkey should be secular, should have these monuments as museums. I'm not talking about the moderates, and I do hope they eventually win out in Turkey. I'm talking about the mainstream, which is voting in the current government in Turkey, which is Islamist. And mind you, not the most extreme party in the parliament. There's worse. So in terms of history, if you look at the maps in plural, on slide 7, you will see that just 100 years ago, there were Christians living in Asia Minor to a great extent. And if you fast forward to the modern day, it's zero. It's close to zero. There has been an annihilation of the Christian populations of Asia Minor, Turkey. The Greeks have been either removed through genocide or forced expulsion. The Armenians have been removed either through genocide or forced expulsion. The Assyrians have also been removed out of genocide or expulsion. And though the rest of the Middle East still has Christians, Iraq, Syria, still has Christians. If you look at the map, there's there's this black hole where Turkey is. Because what happened with the First World War and its subsequent wars is an annihilation of the Christian populations. Now, another disclaimer. What we had in that period was competing nationalisms. I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but competing nationalisms. Greek versus Turkish versus Bulgarian versus this versus that versus that. That's how we had world wars. Everyone, it was an all-in brawl. Now, if that somehow excuses genocide, I don't accept that. But that's the context. Turks absolutely say there was no genocide. There was no any of these accusations. And this is sad, because there is clear historical record of this happening. If you were to deny the Holocaust these days, you would be fined in most countries. If you say Hitler didn't kill any Jews, that's a fine, and in some countries it's jail, including Germany. You get jail in Germany if you said the Holocaust didn't happen. But we had other genocides through history. Hitler was not the only person who committed genocide. The Turks actually gave him the paradigm. Hitler is known for saying, "Who remembers the Armenians?" Turks finished them off and no one's complaining. He used the Turks as his model. Why is this important? Because history repeats itself. And if we don't stop such extreme ideologies and extreme actions, we're going to get a repeat of history. There will be war. And the current Turkish government, and I'll give you the context, is begging for war. They want war. Next slide. That's an example of a church which has been laid to ruin and vandalised on the island of Cyprus. And there are many, many other examples of churches being desecrated. Slide 9. This is a graph that describes the Turkish parliament and probably explains a lot of what's going on in Turkey. Number 1. The orange block, which is about 50%, so President Erdogan has about 50% of the vote. He calls his party the Justice and Development Party, but they are an Islamist party. And there's no equivalent in Australian politics. So it's like basically saying Christian Democrats, which in Australia poll at 0.2%, have 50% of the vote. But even then, the Christian Democrats won't do things as what they're doing. But this is to give you an example of who's running the democracy there. And this is extreme groups. Groups which in our Western liberal societies would be unthinkable that they would even be in power or have any parliamentary representation. So 50% of the Turkish populace keeps voting him in and love what he's doing. Love his belligerence, love his warlike nature, love him declaring threats, they love the fact that he's serving it up to the Israelis, serving it up to the Greeks, serving it up to everyone. He's got an army in Iraq, an army in Syria, an army in Libya, an army in Cyprus. I don't know which other country has this other than America. Which other country has occupational armies in any other country? Not even China. But China's doing the same sort of aggressive thing these days. It's pushing the boundaries, it's pushing the rules, it's pushing the laws. There's international law that they're trying to push the envelope. The Turks are doing the same, been doing it for a long time, longer than China. The blue is about 11%. They are the nationalist movement. Once again, in Australia, it is unthinkable that nationalists would have any representation in the parliament. That's like One Nation having 10%. They're in coalition with Erdogan. So currently this policy of converting churches into mosques, saying that if Greece follows international law and respects its territorial waters, that's a case for war. Casus belli. Casus belli means it's a case for war. We will have reason to go to war. They've declared that the last 20 years. We will fight a war if you follow the international laws and extend your economic zone 12 kilometres around your coast. They said, we'll fight a war. So Greece is like held back for 20 years. They're broke, they need as much resources as they can get, and they're doing nothing because the Turks are threatening war. Which country threatens war like that? China hasn't done so. China's not saying, if America does this, we will fight a war against you. They're ready for it. We know that that's what they will do, but they haven't articulated that. The Turks are very, very belligerent. They are aggressive and they threaten constantly. It was only this year that Erdogan, the same president, said if the Australians want to complain, they can come and we can throw them into the sea and send them back in boxes like we did their grandfathers. This is coming out of the mouth of a democratically elected president who wants to be part of the civilized modern world. We have a problem. And there will be a war. So the reason why we are bringing this up, I as a priest, why am I bringing all this up? Because do I want a war? No. Do you want a war? I take it no. Does anyone support war in here? No. But a war will happen because they are justifying it already and have been doing it for 20 years and edging closer to that point. They've already declared that the Treaty of Lausanne, which was the treaty that established the borders between Greece and Turkey, which was accepted for 80 years and the Turks weren't complaining, but this current mob are saying, we don't accept that treaty, this is an unfair treaty. Okay, so if that's going to be thrown into the rubbish bin, we're going to have war, because that requires them to then take over Greek islands. This is what they're agitating for. We will have war if these people remain in power. How will they be stopped? Well, hopefully the moderate Turks can boot them out of power. The problem, however, is this, that 50% plus 10%, that's already 60%, support all these belligerents. And the next biggest opposition party, which is 25%, the Republican People's Party, that's Kemal Atatürk's successors, they're also in support. So they're trying to outdo each other in the belligerence and in the threats. So when they were asked, should we turn Hagia Sophia back into a mosque? Of course we should. So that's another 25% on top of the 60%. We're talking about 85% of the parliamentary representation of 80 million Turks support most of this belligerence, which tells me that the voters are of similar mind and that such words sway them. They like this. And which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Doesn't matter. The leaders feed it, the voters vote them back in, then they get more harsh and hard line, then the voters get more excited, then they escalate. And it's been escalating for 20 years. And this is only the latest, and this is only symbolic. I mean, turning the church into a mosque is a symbolic thing. They're doing they're doing worse. They're engaging in military invasions. They're engaging in, they've got their navy following oil drilling ships going out to drill in Greek territorial waters. There's going to be a war if they keep going. Next slide. Slide 10 shows the picture or the mosaic of the Deisi. And the Deisi is a very famous depiction of Jesus, John the Baptist, and Our Lady Mary. And you can get a sense of scale, how big it is. Massive. It is such masterpieces which are now covered so that the Muslims can have their prayer. The next two slides I'll let you play when you get back to your cars. It's designed to just be a bit more light-hearted, which I won't play in church because we're in a church. But it's basically a meme. The next one's a meme from some Mexican guy, where basically he's sort of laughing off the fact that they're converting churches into mosques. Well, they're always going to be Orthodox churches. They're always going, the history is, you can't erase the history. They're always going to have been built by Christians, for Christians. You want to turn them into mosques, turn them into mosques. We're going to keep going as Christians. Don't play it in church, play it in your car. And we just keep going. Now, the Imam with the sword gave a sermon on that first day. And just so you think that I'm not making this up and that there will be moderate Turks out there watching this video saying, oh, there's a Greek priest going on about it, making up things, I've got the sermon here. Transcript. May the blessings and help of Allah and the peacefulness and divine abundance of Friday be upon you. In this blessed hour, in this sacred place, we are witnessing a historic moment. Hagia Sofya Mosque is meeting with its congregation. The longing of our nation, which was turned into a heartbreak, is coming to an end today. This was going to happen, dear friends. These guys, it was going to happen. It was going to become a mosque sooner or later. There's no way that the majority of the Turks accepted Kemal's decision. That was forced upon them. The secularization of Turkey was not something they were all, happy about necessarily. Today is the day when the recitation of Takbir, Tahlil and Salawat echo again under Hagia Sophia's domes, and the Adhan and Salat rise from its minarets. They're different Muslim prayers. Salat and Salam. Now, see what's going on. The whole Muslim prayer in a mosque is Arabic, but the sermon can be in your local language. So this was in Turkish, the sermon, but they don't translate Arabic, special Muslim Arabic words into Turkish. They will keep them Arabic. Salat, honor or worship, and salam, peace, be to Prophet Muhammad, who gave the good news about the conquests by saying, one day Constantinople will be conquered. Great is the commander who will conquer it, and great are his soldiers. I'm not sure that's in the Quran. Please, our Muslim friends, put it in the comments section so that we can have a reference to it. I believe that that is some legend thereafter, but it could be from the Quran. But I have no doubt as a historian that whether it was in the Quran or not, that was a belief of the original Muslims, that one day, sooner or later, they will take the Christian capital. And the Christian capital was not Rome, was not Paris, was not London, was none other than Constantinople. That was the ultimate prize in the whole world. Salam be to the spiritual architect of Istanbul. Who's the spiritual architect of Istanbul? Who hit the roads to become the one who attains this glad tiding? Abu Ayyub al-Ansari and the companions of the Prophet and those who followed their gracious footsteps. Okay, so basically what he's saying is the spiritual architect of Istanbul is first generation Muslim, some companion of Muhammad, who that was his aim from day one. Complete erasure of 1,000 years of Christian history. No mention that the Christians were the architects of that. That the city of Constantinople was built specifically to be a new Christian capital of the Roman Empire, a Christianized Roman Empire. It was built as a Christian city. No mention. Erased. Salam be to Sultan Alparslan, who opened the gates of Anatolia. This is the first Turkish sultan to come from Turkmenistan to our nation with the belief that conquest does not mean attacking. Conquest does not mean attacking. What's this called in psychology? An oxymoron? Something dissonance. What is it? Cognitive dissonance. That's saying black isn't black. Black is white. Conquest does not mean attacking, but rendering prosperous, and means building rather than destroying. To our martyrs and veterans who have made it our homeland, he's referring to generations of Turks in the past, and entrusted it to us, and all sultans of the hearts who have remoulded our geography with faith. Tell me there won't be a war if this is the mainstream Turkish opinion. Salam be to Aksham Sadin, the wise scholar who embroidered the love of conquest in Sultan Mehmed's heart and led the first Friday prayer in Hagia Sophia on June the 1st, 1453. Okay, so the very same guy who embroidered, trained, educated, imbued the love of conquest to the conqueror. You see, someone just doesn't wake up one morning and wants to do it. Conquest, domination, oppression. There's an ideology that has to be embroidered in your heart. And this is a problem because generations upon generations of Turks will grow up believing in jihad and conquest. And we will have a war again when the time is right for them and they feel they're ready, they will wage a war. Salam, peace be to that young and determined ruler Mehmed the Conqueror. May Allah let him in paradise, who was attached from heart to the verse. And when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. Allah loves those who rely upon him. He was a genius of history, literature, science, and arts, and produced the most advanced technology of his era, and had the ships move over land, conquered Istanbul with the permission and help of Allah, and then did not allow anybody to cause even the slightest harm to even a piece of pebble in this honourable city. That is historically correct. Once they conquered it, once they blew the walls apart, oh well, it's ours now, peace. The sword is in the left hand. Just as well. Aren't they so nice that they didn't do any further damage? They forget that they converted Hagia Sophia into a mosque, but the rest of the churches remain churches by Mehmed. And we'll talk about endowment in a second. And subsequent sultans disrespected Mehmed the Conqueror's wishes, i.e. that Hagia Sophia be the only mosque converted. And every generation there was some Muslim who said, I want to convert one too. Which one's still a church? That one, I'll do that one. Next generation, I want to convert a church too. That one. And through generation after generation, except two, all the churches of Constantinople will be converted. So, why was this important? Because this same Imam holding the sword, talking about Mehmed being so magnanimous, did not allow anybody to cause even the slightest harm. They basically wiped out the empire. They massacred and killed along the way if you withstood them. Oh, but they're magnanimous because if you surrendered, they didn't hurt you. Okay, that's nice, just as well. He mentions the endowment of Mehmed the Conqueror. Here it is. Any property that is endowed by Mehmed the Conqueror is inviolable in our belief and burns whoever touches it. The charter of the endower is indispensable, and whoever infringes upon it is cursed. Well, they is just cursed all the rest of the Muslims, because that endowment, that vakufi in Greek, it's from the Turkish, was that Hagia Sophia be the only mosque turned into a church, right? The other way around, church turned into a mosque. So they've just cursed the other sultans who disrespected Mehmet's wish. But considering that the rest of the history is all over the place anyway, I wouldn't expect from the Imam accuracy of that history. Let's keep going. Salam, peace be to the father of architecture. The great artist Sinan, the architect, as if he's the father of architecture, who refurbished Hagia Sophia, yes he did, with minarets, and reinforced it so that it has survived for centuries. Yes he did. And in terms of world culture, we admire Sinan's work. Salam be to our brothers and sisters in all corners of the world. He is talking about the Muslims, who have been longing for and celebrating with joy the reopening of Hagia Sophia to worship. So this is not just celebration for the Turks, in other words. I'm skipping a few bits. Hagia Sophia, with its age being over 15 centuries. Let's see if he might mention its previous history as a church and as the biggest Christian cathedral for its entire existence as a church. With its age being over 15th century, is one of the most valuable places of worship, knowledge and wisdom in the history of humankind. No mention of the builders, no mention of the culture that built it, no mention of its descendants, no mention of the fact that we still name our churches Hagia Sophia. We are nothing to them. This demonstrates the complete disregard and lack of care for their neighbours. The mosques in Greece are still museums, or they've either been given over to worship or have been looked after. And I think there's just one mosque that's a church in Greece. This age-old practice of worship is a magnificent expression of servitude and submission to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Ah yes, world domination, we've heard that one before. We mentioned the endowments of Mehmet the Conqueror. Hagia Sophia is the place from which the boundless mercy of Islam is once again declared to the whole world. Mercy, huh? Boundless mercy. Sword in the hand, okay. Mehmet the Conqueror said to the people who took shelter in Hagia Sophia after the conquest and waited warriorly for what was going to happen to them, "From this moment on, do not be afraid for your freedom and life. The property of no person will be looted, no person will be oppressed, and no person will be punished because of their religion." And he acted accordingly. Historically, yes, he did, but his successors didn't. We had oppression for centuries. We had plenty of property looted. We had plenty of punishment due to religion. And that's the story of the new martyrs. And we commemorate them day after day in the church to this day. It is for this reason that Hagia Sophia is the symbol of respect to belief and of the morality of coexistence. Cognitive dissonance. Morality of okay, if you want to be talking about universal values and coexistence, let's share the church. It was fine as a museum, we could all go in. Or why don't the Muslims pray on Friday and the Christians pray on Sunday, if you want, if you extol the morality of coexistence. That's why it's a one-way street with these people. The reopening of Hagia Sophia to worship is a requirement of loyalty to its historical legacy. Oh, really? What about its original legacy? Complete erasure. It is the return of a sacred place which had embraced believers for 5 centuries to its original function. Newsflash, its original function was as a church, and it was a church for 1,000 years before it was a mosque for 500 years. Falsification of history. The reopening of Hagia Sophia to worship is the evidence that the Islamic civilization, the foundation of which is Tawhid, the building block of which is knowledge, and the cement of which is virtue, continues to rise in spite of all drawbacks. The reopening of Hagia Sophia to worship means that all sorrowful masjids, mosques, or other places of worship, first and foremost the Masjid al-Aqsa, and oppressed believers on earth are able to get lifeline support. What mosque is he talking about? Where's Al-Aqsa Mosque? Jerusalem. These guys are not going to stop. Their expectation is that they need to liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque from the Jews, from the Israeli state. So please pay attention, people out there. The Israelis, I think, are paying attention. But America, the West, why are we funding Turkey at the moment? Why are we sending aid? Why are we allies? Why are we celebrating Anzac Day together with them when they were the enemy then and they're the enemy now? They're the people who will repeat the wars of the past. They want to get Al-Aqsa back. Hold on, but isn't it already a Muslim mosque? Yes, it is. But you know what? They don't control the surrounding area, the whole land. And oppressed believers on earth. Okay, I've heard this one before. The reopening of Hagia Sophia to worship is the determination of our noble nation who holds the faith and love of the homeland above everything. See that? Faith and love of homeland is the combination of two ideologies, both religion and political ideology. To build a solid future with the spiritual power passed down from the ancestors. What could be more crestfallen than a mosque, the minarets of which are silent, and the minbar of which is deserted, the dome of which is mute, and the garden of which is lonely? Due to the hostility to Islam that rises each passing day, there are mosques in various parts of the world today that are attacked, closed by force, and even bombed and destroyed. Well, there probably are. Hundreds of millions of Muslims are facing oppression. Okay, I see this language. This is the language of victimism. Okay? And I was racking my brain. I was trying to make sense of it. Why is the left side of politics allied with Islam on big political things? Why is Islam allied with BLM in this day and age? BLM being a Marxist organisation, when we know that Marxists are cleaned up in Muslim countries, and in purely Marxist countries, they were atheists, they closed down mosques. How are they allies? How are they friends? Here's the answer. They talk the same language, the language of we are oppressed. But hold on, historically you're the oppressor. You've been doing the oppressing. Okay, so in the name of we are oppressed, we then get the power to oppress. So both the left does that, Marxism, communism and so on, and Islam does that. There's some idea that the Muslims are oppressed. They probably are. But that excuses their oppression of others. I would like to show Mehmet the Conqueror's this great attitude regarding Hagia Sophia 5 centuries ago as an example to the world, and to call on all humanity to say stop. Stop to such anti-Islamist discourses, actions and any kind of oppressions. What world are these people living in? We as believers who regard the meaning of Hagia Sophia as a lofty cause and sacred entrustment need to work to ensure that compassion, tolerance, peace, tranquility and benevolence prevail all around the world. The same people who are doing the opposite are saying this. One-way street. We believe that all people, this is now pandering to those political forces in the West, in our countries. Listen to the language. And this is what gets extracted and quoted in the media. All people are brothers and sisters in religion or equal in creation. We believe that the earth is our shared home. We believe that all members of this home, regardless of religion, ethnicity, skin colour or country, have the right to live freely and humanely in safety within the framework of universal values and moral principles. Beautiful. So their allies are going to take that and say, see, they're nice people. Under the dome of Hagia Sophia, we call on all humanity to uphold justice, peace, compassion and rightfulness. We call on defending universal values and moral principles that protect human dignity and make us the most honourable creature. I can't read more of this. The doors of Hagia Sophia Mosque will be open to all servants of Allah without discrimination. What does that mean? Once again, that's you're allowed to, when there is no Muslim prayers going on, you're allowed to enter a mosque. Is that now cut? Can I keep talking? Do I wait? Keep talking. So, like our churches are open, anyone can walk in. There's no one at the door checking people's identity or passports. The doors of Hagia Sophia will be open to all servants of Allah without discrimination. Well, will you let us in to pray? Oh, no, we can't do that. You see what's going on? That is a falsehood. Be honest with us. At least don't use this terminology, because discrimination is the talk that the left wants to hear. Okay? Oh, there's no discrimination here. Yes, there is. Because you're saying that I can't pray in that edifice because my ancestors built it. Can I please pray there on a Sunday? Oh, no, you can't do that. Well, you're discriminating. Anyway, so I will close that bit of the talk and once again bring it back round to don't get angry, don't get upset. I'll probably refer you to St. Nicholas Kavasilas, who would have witnessed many churches becoming mosques in the 1300s. I'm pretty sure it was him, and I stand to be corrected. Byzantinists, please write it in the comments if I'm wrong. He said, don't bewail, don't mourn when churches are destroyed. Mourn when these temples are destroyed. Don't bewail or don't mourn when they take your churches, but bewail and mourn when you're not building this church and this temple. That gives us focus. So the Turks can do what they want. In view of not wanting a war, I think we should be talking to our local members. I think we're at that point now. Erdogan has been in power for 16 years. Yeah, 2004, 2002. He's almost 20 years. He's extremely powerful in Turkey, and there's no end in sight to this. We should be talking to our local members. Each citizen of every country should be talking to their politicians to start making an effort here to at least stopping the aid, stop giving them billions in military aid, not economic aid, military aid. They're building up these armies with which they're going to attack, and they're constantly threatening. We can't have that. If they have a problem with international law, there's something called the International Court. Take the Greeks to court. Simple. If you don't agree, the Greeks will abide by the decision of the court. International law. But the Turks don't want to go to the court because they know they're going against international law, and they're not abiding by it. They're actually abrogating it, refusing to abide by it. So yes, I think it is time that we start talking to our local members, writing letters and saying, look, the Turkish government is being too threatening and it's starting to look very serious. And we need to, of course, hope for a day when Turkey becomes, how do you reverse this now? They had Kemal Atatürk, who was in Turkish history a giant, do what he did. Turning Hagia Sophia into a mosque, for them to now go back to museum, forget church, museum, they're going to have riots. They're going to have a civil war over this if they were to go one step back. And I don't know which political party, when they're ever going to be in power, with the strength and temerity of a Kemal Atatürk, would be able to reverse this. This is only going to get worse. So it is time that we start seeing Turkey no longer as a democratic beacon in the Middle East, but one of many in the Middle East. It's like Saudi Arabia, like Iran, that's where it's going with what it's doing. To our Turkish friends who may watch this video, please forgive me. I would hope that you would be in agreement with me that the leader of Turkey is crossing a line of extreme ideology. I know many of you might agree with him. That's fine. I say what I've said with respect, and I have. Hopefully you can understand where I've come from, and hopefully you can refer back to the Muslim idea of respecting the people of the book. And please tell me what respect the people of the book entails if it's not respecting their places of worship and respecting their right to life and their right to property and so on. Please tell me what else that respect could possibly be in the comments. What have I left out? Questions, comments?
Because they're all turning our churches and mosques, are they going to eventually kick out the patriarch?
Are they eventually going to kick out the patriarch? Okay, so once again, see Turkish society as a spectrum. This end of the spectrum wants him out. There's only 2,000 Greek Orthodox Christians left in Turkey, in a country of 80 million people. This is the descendants of the original inhabitants and natives of the country. Somehow we don't belong there. Why? That's our homeland too. That was our homeland for many thousands of years, way before the Turks turned up 500 years ago. Let's go Seljuks, 800 years ago. Why isn't that our homeland? And we're happy to share with you, but they're not happy to share. This is this extreme element, which is pretty much half the populace, as represented in its parliament, disclaimer. So will they want to kick out the patriarch? Yes, they want to kick out the patriarch. Will it happen? I don't know. This is a political game. It's an unknown. Has the Patriarchate been bombed? Yes, it has. They've thrown bombs into the Patriarchate. It's been a while since, but we're getting back to that. Last one was 2000 and something. Actual bomb. Questions? Mind you, Erdogan last week said the Greeks are not worthy of their Byzantine heritage. Wow. That's like saying the Australians are not worthy of their Anzac heritage. That's like saying the French are not worthy of their Enlightenment heritage. You see what's going on? That's very strong language. Who are you to tell us we're not worthy of our Byzantine heritage? Are the Turks worthy of it? They're worthy of their heritage because they stole it. Oh, okay, I see how it works. You can steal things and that's okay. Oh, conquest, that's right. That's what you mean by worthy. You were stronger than us. Oh, okay, so the strong can do whatever they like. There's no rules here. Okay, I understand now. Other questions? And so a warning to all the nations of the world, if we allow the strong to keep doing what they like, there will be wars. And so what we vote for should matter in our local parliaments.
Father, so my question is for the Western media, at least throughout my living in Australia in the past dozen of years, so they have been systematically, through their cultural propaganda, they say the Arabic culture was the preserver of classic civilization, etc., and they portray Christianity as the religion of oppression. What is your understanding of the reason where it comes from? Where is this hate? Is it purely, say, from the socialist Marxist agenda, or were they even, say, the root of it in the Enlightenment philosophy? And what can we do to try to minimize the negative impact on this?
Okay, so the question is Western media, or let's say parts of Western media, there's this narrative that Christianity is bad and, traditional Christian civilization of the West is a bad thing, and they always portray any Christian thing in a bad light. Yeah, is that fair to say? That happens a lot. Yes, it happens a lot. And that any non-Christian, it could be Muslim, but mainly Muslim, religion is always, not always, but often portrayed in a positive light. For example, the Imam holding the sword. The media title head, when there was a reaction to the Imam holding the sword, was this: Turkish Imam attacked for sermon. This is exactly what you're trying to ask me, right? Why does the Western media excuse them? Is this what you're asking me? Yes. Right, okay. You mentioned the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, age of reason, age of science, and we respect science as Orthodox Christians. I've said this a million times. A big part of what it was and what it tried to achieve for Western society and what it viewed as the future for Western society was to, first of all, start with separation of church and state, and then limit church, and then push church to a corner, and then, if possible, destroy it, eliminate it. Atheism wants no religion. Okay? So we often hear that expressed in the media as, we don't want freedom of religion. We want freedom from religion. Okay, so this is the same atheists talking, okay? And so that has labelled, that has branded Christianity as an evil thing. So all those who espouse Enlightenment ideals and all its descendants, i.e. ideological descendants, are going to have a very negative view of Christianity. That includes Marxism, that includes communism, that includes many nationalisms, ironically. Some nationalisms use the church for their aims, no doubt about that. But some nationalisms, when they found Christianity against them, obliterated their own, okay, and saw them as traitors. Christians who were against, German Christians who were against the Nazis were obliterated and sent to concentration camps like everyone else, like many others rather. Okay, they were enemy to the Nazis. They were Christians. There were more Christians in the Nazi concentration camps than Jews. Remember that one? They were political opponents. So whether it's Marxist or specifically, or leftist generally, or atheist, in terms of worldview, they've just decided Christianity is a bad thing. And there is this non-objective view of history. And they whitewash Islam. Islam gets a free pass. And even the people who share their ideals, non-religious people have done evil things. Non-religious people have had concentration camps. Non-religious people have waged wars. Non-religious people have executed genocide. But they don't mention that. Only religions. Religions are the cause for all wars. Well, that ignores history. And it ignores the last 100 years where when the atheists got in charge, they did worse. They killed more. Does that answer your question roughly? Once you've branded someone as evil, you've made up your mind, okay? And this is something I hope I haven't done tonight, okay? And, you know, if we brand the Turks as all evil, then we'll think all Turks are evil. Well, I hope I've made it clear that, yeah, moderate, okay, extreme, okay, well, extreme is now expanding. I've tried to be objective and fair. And I'm calling and appealing on the Turks because they're the only ones that can make the difference here. We can't make a difference. There was a professor on Turkish TV a week ago, and he said, do you know how easy it is to invade Greece? We can just stroll in like the Germans strolled into Poland in 1939. This is on TV. This is mainstream now. This is not some extreme group hiding it in some cell. This is mainstream Turkish TV. Now, who can change this? The Turks themselves, the voters themselves, on the one hand. On the other hand, the Western countries need to curb where they can and how they can. France has got the idea, sent navy ships to scare them off a bit. Other questions? You've been very patient.